David Seymour, the ACT leader, and Chlöe Swarbrick, Green Party co-leader in Wellington for us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
David, can I ask you to look into... Yes, that's the one. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning,
Bit of
guys.
a downgrade, but okay.
You're what, looking at yourself?
No, I can just see a camera.
Right. Hey, thanks for coming in this morning. Good to have you both here. Let's start with the changes to shoplifting. Chlöe, on-the-spot fines, if you are shoplifting like up to $500, you can get up to $500 fine. What do you think of that?
Well, I think the question really has to be, do we want to prevent crime or do we just want to respond to it? And if we're talking about those who are engaged in shoplifting, particularly many of the offences that we are currently seeing in our supermarkets, then I think we really have to ask ourselves, do we believe genuinely that providing people who are shoplifting food in order to put kai on the table in a cost of living crisis is going to prevent that crime?
Okay.
I think we need to be honest with ourselves and say that it won't.
Do we know that the majority of the food being stolen is food and not wine or high-value products that'll be on-sold?
Well, again, Ryan, I think that the question has to be, do we want to prevent crime or do we want to merely respond to it? Because we've had a swathe of evidence by the likes of, for example, Chester Burrows, the late, great former policeman who went on to be a National Party MP and then National Party Minister of Police, then went on to chair Turuki, the Safe and Effective Justice.
Yeah, no, we know who Chester Burrows is. Great man, and had strong views on it, no doubt. But do you think if everybody... Well, if nobody was poor, nobody would steal?
I think that if society were a lot fairer, I think that if people weren't experiencing extreme poverty, then yes, we would absolutely see a substantial reduction in crime.
David,
and that's what all of the facts show us.
Does Chlöe have a point that if we didn't have so many people who were in the poverty, we didn't have a cost of living crisis the way it is, there would be fewer people stealing?
You know what? There's a lot of people who don't have much, but they manage to get by without going and stealing from other people. There's a lot of people who go into the supermarket and they say these prices are up, and that's true, they are, but what they may not see is they're partly up, because if you talk to anyone in retail, the amount of what they call shrinkage, or people that leave without paying, means that they've got to put the price up for everyone else who actually does pay. So this is a real issue for people who are actually trying to get by. Things are made worse by people stealing. And when I hear Chlöe saying, oh, we just need to prevent crime, let's be honest. She was in government for 6 years. They increased government spending.
She wasn't.
Oh, okay.
3.
Okay. You were just sitting behind the people in government. Whatever.
No, David, I was actively critiquing the government at the time.
Okay. You were a rebel without a cause. But can I get back to the point? They increased spending by $60 billion over 6 years, and shoplifting was never, ever higher than when they were in government.
Okay, but
now,
your plan...
Government giving people money hasn't actually led to better behaviour. Maybe having the right values, saying that someone else's, don't take it, and if you do, you'll face consequences, is the way forward for our country.
What about the idea that...
No one is saying that stealing is right here. We're talking about...
No, but you're saying it's justified. Chlöe, you're saying it's justified. This is the big difference that we have.
I'm not saying it's justified at all, Ryan. Please don't put words into my mouth here. What I'm saying is how we can create public policy that actually prevents crime, or at least reduces it.
Yeah, so 6 years and it got worse.
So just to be clear, you don't think if you're poor and you steal food from a supermarket, that's not justified in the Greens' eyes?
Ryan, I think that we are taking us into kind of soundbite territory in which
the soundbite you could have just given is, no, it's not justified, but the truth is you believe it is.
Okay, all right, let's move on. The Inter-Islander ferry, some suggestion, because of a report that Winston had done for Cabinet, that it could potentially in the future be privatised, the operation of it. David, you would obviously support this, being the ACT party, and you want the government out of stuff, but Winston will never support it, so why is it in there?
Well, first of all, what the government's done is set up a structure where a company's been set up to buy the ferries, to sort out the terminals, make sure they connect with each other. The reason it was such a problem when we came into government is they couldn't get ferries that would connect with the terminals. It was going to cost nearly $4 billion to do that. So we've actually reduced the cost. We've set up a separate company. The ferries will go into that company. And yes, one of the possibilities is that company could be owned, managed, operated by someone else. Now, I actually favour that.
Yeah, but Winston won't, right?
Well, Well, let's see, because I tell you what persuades politicians more than anything else is the need to balance the books. And when I look at that article you've got about the top taxpayers, the 10 biggest taxpayers in New Zealand, they pay about $3 billion of tax. We're spending $9 billion a year in interest on government debt, 3 times as much as the top 10 taxpayers. Now, you've got to ask yourself, do you want to own a ferry business and pay interest on the debt? Or would it be better to let someone else do it, especially given there's already a private ferry company that's doing quite nicely?
Chlöe?
Privatising strategic transport infrastructure is a really, really bad idea. I mean,
you complain about soundbites.
Winston Peters. Winston Peters is on the record back in 2003 when the government at the time had to buy back the rail services across this country after the disastrous privatisation of the former national government in the 1990s, saying that we never should have sold them. This is trickle-down economics in practice, whereby we see conservative governments effectively provide no meaningful resourcing for our public infrastructure, then say we should privatise that, and then those services end up being sold back for more money, increasing the cost of living for regular New Zealanders. It doesn't work.
Punk rap performers, this is over in the UK, Bob Villan, under investigation there for leading chants at Glastonbury. Have a look.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though?
That was the tame one. He then goes on to lead the chant, death, death to the IDF. BBC now under investigation for broadcasting, a whole bunch of stuff going on. Chlöe, I understand that there is quite a lot of social media pressure for politicians like yourself to come out and either defend this guy or to condemn him. What say you?
I say let's focus on the fact that tens of thousands of innocent people are being mercilessly slaughtered after being made refugees in their own land. I have been involved in trying to get this government to do the absolute bare minimum in terms of applying sanctions onto Israel for its merciless slaughter of innocent people, the same thing that we did to Russia for its unlawful invasion into an occupation of Ukraine. Yet for some reason, Ryan, we continue to see more pressure exerted on politicians and political figures who showcase their support for Palestine than we do on politicians who are being complicit in this genocide.
Okay, David, do you condemn what was said, death, death to the IDF?
First of all, there are terrible things happening in the Middle East. No one disputes that. I think the way that Chlöe simplified it is a little bit unfortunate, but let's and compared it with Russia, that's wrong. But let's just forget all that. My
How's
question
it different
is,
from Russia, David? Because
I'm not going to argue about with you.
No, you haven't answered that question at all. And you're the Deputy Prime Minister. How is this different from Russia?
Oh, well, I think the basic fact is that Russia attacked Ukraine. I mean, they actually initiated the conflict. Just
and
as
what happened
Hamas
76 years ago in Palestine, David?
Oh, God. You know what? You could go back 4,000 years. The point is that there are things that are happening that are terrible. The question is, why do we lose our humanity here in New Zealand? And when I see people chanting, just imagine being a Jewish Londoner, a Jewish person in that crowd, a kid that's gone off to the Glastonbury Festival, and suddenly you're surrounded by people doing chants from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, knowing that means that you and people like you should be wiped off the map. How would a person like that feel? Imagine if that happened in Auckland. My question for Chlöe is, do you actually denounce this? Do you think it's okay to justify losing your humanity in New Zealand because terrible things are happening over there? Because you've led the same chant, Chlöe, and I think it's right for you to come forward and say, actually, yes, it's terrible. We all have views about what's happening in the Middle East, but let's uphold our humanity here. And I think you should denounce what they're saying, and you should denounce that kind of behaviour on behalf of any young kid in that crowd, because I can't think of many things more menacing than a crowd that is chanting like that.
Chlöe,
if I denounce that chant, David,
yes,
will you do the absolute bare minimum in upholding human rights and justice and applying the same logic that you did to Russia?
But we shouldn't have, hang on, guys.
Stop trying to avoid the issue.
But we shouldn't have to.
I'm not avoiding the issue here. The issue here, if I can be crystal clear, the issue here is 100,000 innocent Palestinians being slaughtered.
Yeah, totally.
That
but
doesn't
we can't
justify losing our humanity here in New Zealand.
I don't think we should be qualifying for either of you. Hang on. Chlöe, hang on. I don't think either of you should be qualifying statements. I mean, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can say what is happening in Gaza is disgusting and a breach.
And we should do something about it.
Yeah, but then you can also say you shouldn't chant death, death to the IDF, Chlöe.
You shouldn't be chanting death to anybody,
Okay,
Ryan.
good.
But this is my
Okay.
point, is that we spend
what
far
about-
more time
What about from the
debating
river to the sea?
rhetoric
Do you
as
denounce
opposed
that?
to the actual action
All
and
right.
inaction from our government. And what I am saying is that this government has sat on its hands for 2 years as innocent people have been mercilessly
that's
slaughtered in
untrue.
Gaza.
All right,
and
we
it
have to-
refused
The government's
apply
taken
the same
multiple
logic that they did
actions.
to Russia.
We have to leave it there, team. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.